Hello folks, welcome back to yet another marvelous anime video, and this time we're back with more of your favorite Berserk content. Berserk as a series needs no introduction. Created by the late legendary mangaka Kentaro Miura in 1989, the series continues to capture the hearts and imagination of audiences over 3 decades later. The series is a seminal work in the dark fantasy genre and has earned both renown and notoriety for its mature themes, including gore, sexual violence, and explicit nudity. However, it's not just a mere orgy of perversion. Miura has crafted a world that is exquisitely detailed in its darkness and misery. The violent themes serve to enhance a tale of redemption, sacrifice, and vengeance, all of which are more complex than we make them sound. Berserk is filled with deeply layered characters brought to life by Miura's masterful storytelling. In today's video, we'll be exploring a group of characters called the Four Elemental Kings and how they impact the world of Berserk and its characters. Although these entities don't make any physical appearance in the series, their influence is pervasive throughout it nonetheless. They represent a far more primal and ancient force than the law of causality and the Godhand, making them some of the most important characters in the overall cosmology of the series. Therefore, it's only fitting that we explore and analyze them thoroughly, as it's likely to grant us a deeper understanding of Miura's piece de résistance. Miura also drew heavily from real-world inspirations like the Swiss physician and occultist Paracelsus's theory on elementals and the Kabbalistic traditions. Much of what we'll discuss today is based on thoughts and theories drawn from the limited information we have regarding these entities. So, if you feel like you have anything more to add, be sure to let us know in the comments down below. With all that out of the way, and without further ado, let's put our tinfoil hats on and dive right in as we explore the vast astral planes of Berserk. Let's begin. Who are the Elemental Kings? A brief overview on the elemental hierarchy. In most works of fiction, the elements of the world have a sense of sentience associated with them, which is no different here in Berserk. These sentient elemental beings are magical entities that resonate with the natural elements of the physical world. Although they were previously mostly confined to the astral realm, after the great roar of the astral world, like all spiritual beings, they too now roam the physical world freely. With the witch Shirke having joined Guts' party, these beings have been making frequent appearances in the series due to her reliance on them. Each of these elementals can be broadly divided into 4 base species, all of whom we'll discuss in this video later. There are also elemental lords who are basically more powerful elementals that have immense powers and are extremely hard to summon and control. On top of the hierarchy are the most powerful elementals in existence, called the Four Elemental Kings, who lord over their respective elementals and the elements that they share an affinity with. These beings have power levels equal to a deity and were worshipped across the lands before the practice was outlawed by the Holy See. These 4 elemental kings act as an antithesis to the idea of evil and the Godhand, as they provide succor and hope in a world filled with misery and gloom. Even the Holy See, which condemns, if not outright refuses to acknowledge the existence of magic, has integrated the 4 kings as 4 angels in their scriptures. These elemental kings are each assigned to a direction along with an element that's invoked when summoning them. The 4 elemental kings add another layer to the rich tapestry of complex narratives that Miura has woven with Berserk. Elemental Kings. Their significance and symbolism explored. King of the East. Domain, wind. When a powerful enough magic user utters these words, "O blessed King of the East, whose spirit rises over the mountain as a zephyr, and whose golden raiment gleams like the sun," they may be granted the powers of the ruler of the winds. The King of the East lords over all wind elementals, big and small. He's the lord of all sylphs and other elementals that are attuned to the wind. The King of the Sylphs represents freedom and mobility in an otherwise stagnant world where there is no real freedom due to the law of causality. It is the very breath that creatures take to stay alive. Hence, the King of the East is directly responsible for the creation and maintenance of the human consciousness. Just like the wind, he is omniscient and omnipresent, existing everywhere unseen, flowing through the world unfettered. As we mentioned, the wind flow is omnipresent everywhere. Hence, the power of the King of the East could also be seen functioning as a conduit between the sky and earth, which is symbolic of the mortal and divine realms. We also know that Shirke's ability to perceive magic is shown to us with the wind-like imagery, which could hint that the ability stems from him. There are also certain things we can discern about the King of the East from the very incantation that summons him. If you look at the lines, increases over the mountain as a zephyr, it implies that the king is just like a zephyr, which is a cool, gentle wind that brings aid and succor to mortals by helping them overcome obstacles and challenges represented by the mountain. The other interesting line is about his garments, which state that he wears golden raiments that gleam like the sun. The imagery this paints is a deific one that is often associated with purity, divinity, and regality. He represents life itself, along with freedom from fate bolstered by invisible strength. With the age of Fantasia now upon the land of Berserk, we're surely going to see more of the King of the East and the rest of his compatriots in this series. King of the West, Domain Water. In Berserk, whenever water magic is invoked, it's used to provide protection and healing. Just like when using air magic, Shirkei uses the power of the water elementals while using water magic. These beings are called undines, and they almost look like fish from a distance. The effects of water magic are in direct contrast to what the otherwise malevolent spells and events represent. For instance, the Invocation of Doom and the Brand of Sacrifice represent suffering and fate, while the Apostles themselves represent the sacrifice of one's humanity and soul for power. The powers of the King of the West are symbolic of spiritual resistance that helps those who invoke his name retain their humanity and resist these things. It's a force that, while capable of causing massive destruction, as seen in Enoch by drowning all evil before it, it's also capable of healing and mending. The King of the West and his power stands in direct opposition to Berserk's dominant metaphysics of causality and ambition. As the King of the West, a direction which is symbolic of the end, he can also be associated with the concept of death. In a world where violent deaths are rampant and tormented spirits lurk in eternal damnation, the King of the West offers a more peaceful alternative for an end. He offers hope that there is an afterlife where the souls rest in peace. In a world that's overrun by the corruption of body, mind, and soul, the King of the West offers purification. This is not a far-fetched idea, as water has always been associated with purification and cleansing since ancient times. His opposition to the law of causality and its agents is symbolized by water's amorphous qualities. It has no shape and, depending on its quantity, can either be a raging torrent or a drink that quenches one's thirst. All of this is in direct contrast to the rigidity and inflexible nature of causality, which leaves no room for change. If the struggler ever had to choose an element, in our opinion, it would be water, due to its ability to endure and transform regardless of what's thrown at it. The King of the West is, therefore, a very important figure in Berserk, despite not having made a physical appearance to date. King of the North, Domain Earth. The King of the North, whose dominion lies over the Earth itself, is one of the most powerful entities in all of Berserk. He serves as an anchor in a world filled with raw emotions and spiritual chaos where people mutate and gods manipulate. The King of the North's power is flashy but foundational, just like the Earth. He remains silent and still like the mountains, providing shelter to those who seek to hold their ground against the raging torrent of causality. He rules over the gnomes and other spirits who share an affinity with the element of earth. In the series, we've seen Shirkei invoking the magic of the gnomes to raise stone walls and create defensive rock barriers and traps for enemies. As the entity that lords over this domain of magic, one can imagine he can do all of these things much more effectively on a grander scale. In many traditions, the direction of the north is also associated with the same qualities as that of the earth. The north is cold and unyielding, where only the bravest souls might survive, which makes anyone who dwells there have exceptional endurance. This is a quality that is a prerequisite if one is to survive in the dangerous world of Berserk. The stillness that the North embodies is very much different from the stagnancy and the lack of agency propagated by the law of causality. While causality causes stagnancy due to it removing any agency and freedom regarding one's fate, the stillness of the North is meant to symbolize resilience in the face of chaos and hardship sown by the former. As such, the King of the North and his powers directly mirror Guts himself in many ways. Just like the North and the Earth, Guts is unyielding in the face of causality, struggling against fate through sheer willpower. His struggle is rooted in raw survival more than any form of divine intervention. Just like the mountains of the North, Guts endures without breaking. His invocation, O blessed King of the North, it is for thy rule that all living beings of the earth rejoice, clearly indicates that he's a benevolent force that is as ancient as the world itself. The earth is ancient and enduring. It will outlast the current state of the world, and the King of the North provides the same hope and belief to those who invoke his name. King of the South, Domain Fire. The King of the South, who's also known as the King of Salamanders, is a great spirit of flame whose dominion lies over the element of fire and all those who have an affinity to it. His powers and those of the fire elementals are often invoked by magic users in battle to cause carnage and destruction. As such, he's the most warlike of all the elemental kings in Berserk. Witches have been seen casting fireballs and creating walls of flame and light by invoking the powers of fire elementals. While these spells might not directly invoke the King of the South's powers, we must remember that the element in his domain, and by extension the power for these spells, comes from him indirectly. Further, we also see the destructive capabilities of a fire elemental lord when Shirke summons the Wheel of Flame. It was able to lay waste to Ganishka's Daka army on the docks of Ritanis in a fearsome display of unbridled power. One can therefore only imagine how powerful the King of the South, who lords over all fire, must indeed be. Judging by the temperament displayed by the Wheel of Flame, we can safely assume that rage is an aspect of the King of the South, and he embodies the duality of the flame in his character as well. The King of Salamanders is not just a destroyer of one's foes, but also a test of spiritual balance, for a fiery soul can grant immense strength, but if left unchecked, it can burn away the body, mind, and soul of an individual as well. He purges the taint left behind by the unholy Godhand and their followers, and restores the world to its primordial state one step at a time. The King of the South is vitality incarnate, as without it, all things would perish in the cold and dark. His powers light up the grim dark world of Berserk both physically and spiritually. As fire is the spark of civilization itself, without the King of Salamander's benevolence, there would be no human civilization for causality to govern. The King of the South symbolizes the flame of resistance in a dark and deterministic world. While he is a benevolent entity, he can also be dangerous and unstable, but sometimes the only answer to the darkness. The narrative reflection of the elemental kings on Guts. A spirit forged in flames. The elemental kings aren't just mere powerful magical entities that reside in the astral plane, they're also a narrative device deployed by Miura upon which his protagonist's personality is reflected. For those with a keen eye for this sort of thing, it's easy to notice the various ways in which these immortal beings map the core aspects of Guts' character and journey so far. This starts with the King of the North, who holds dominion over the element of fire. He echoes Guts' wrath and his quest for vengeance after the events of the Fifth Eclipse, in particular during the Black Swordsman arc. Guts is consumed by the flames of vengeance towards Griffith, the rest of the Godhand, and the Apostles. His soul is ablaze with hatred and anger, which serves as fuel for him to survive the most arduous of challenges against all odds. The fire fuels his appetite for destruction, all the while consuming him from within. The most appropriate example of this is Guts donning the Berserker armor that feeds on his wrath and negative emotions. In a literal manifestation of this power during the fight on the docks of Ritanis, his sword, the Dragon Slayer, along with the Berserker armor, are both imbued with the power of the flame. As you can see, the Elemental King of the South is deeply reflected in Guts' struggle, especially right after the eclipse. Unbreakable will, like the mountains. Moving on to the King of the North, whose domain is Earth, we've already discussed how he symbolizes unbreakable will and endurance. These are qualities that define Guts, as without them, his quest would have been over before it even started. Ever since his birth, Guts has lived in a world mired with violence. He himself has been subjected to some of its cruelest forms even from an early age. From his encounter with Donovan to his betrayal at the hands of Griffith, without resilience and endurance, Berserk's story might have been very different. The qualities that the King of the Gnomes embodies are reflected in Guts' never-say-die attitude and his refusal to bend and break despite what causality hurls at him. While fire might flame his vengeance, without Earth's endurance he might have already burned out. It's the form of spiritual gravity that keeps him grounded in his purpose and prevents him from losing his mind to the insanity and horrors that he's had to encounter in his journey so far. A tempest of emotions. While fire and earth might temper Guts' character, we can find echoes of the King of the West and his element of water in his more emotional side. It counterbalances his fiery nature and rage through a quiet current of love and emotional truth, giving his quest a much deeper meaning beyond mere vengeance. Unfettered and unbound to any place, like the wind. As for the King of the East and his narrative reflection on Guts, we don't have to look too deep to see the connections immediate. Just like the wind, Guts has always been a wanderer. His only home has been in the heat of battle, always meandering towards conflict as if drawn to it. He is, after all, the struggler, always in motion and never resting, with the wind also symbolic of his inability to root and rest, and just like the wind, Guts is ever elusive in causality's grasp. In this way, all four elemental kings have a massive narrative impact on Berserk and particularly on Guts, adding multiple layers to Kentaro Miura's already complex storytelling. What role do the four elemental kings perform in Berserk's universe? The four elemental kings, while never appearing directly in the storyline, play a major role in shaping the world of Berserk and the characters that dwell within it. We've already discussed their narrative reflection on the protagonist in the previous section. However, their actual role in the world of Berserk is much deeper than that. Source of all mortal magic. In Berserk, magic is a very real thing. While the Godhand's various feats can be called magic, they're anything but mortal. Most human beings who practice magic do so by borrowing the powers of elemental beings like sylphs, undine, gnomes, and salamanders. All of them answer to their respective kings, who are the original font of their power. Thus, whether it's directly, like when Shirkei uses the formation of the four, or indirectly by summoning lesser fire spirits, the four elemental kings play a huge part in magic being accessible to humans. It is impossible to perform some of the highest level spells without having earned their favor first. The magic that they're responsible for is also magic that doesn't corrupt. Berserk wouldn't be much of a fantasy world with no magic in it. Therefore, the four elemental kings play a pivotal role in ensuring that magic exists in the mortal world. Guardians of Humanity. The four elemental kings of Berserk are considered to be guardians of humanity, not because of some morally just reasons. In fact, even if one were somehow able to summon the kings, it would be a highly dangerous and reckless act without proper training and preparation. Even seasoned and talented practitioners like Shirkei and Flora can only sense their presence and communicate with them with great effort. Then why do we consider these entities to be humanity's guardians? The answer is that they represent the most primordial forces of nature and the natural state of the world, in contrast to the inhuman forces of evil like the Apostles and the Godhand were born of corrupted human emotions and desires. Due to their powers also being drawn from the astral plane, spells and rituals performed in their name are highly effective against evil spirits and creatures. They embody the primal natural order. The four elemental kings are perhaps some of the most ancient entities to exist in the Berserk universe. While the law of causality might be the dominant force that shapes the fortunes of the world, they predate it by eons. They offer a glimpse back into a world untainted by the foul corruption of the Godhand and other evil beings given form and power through human desire and emotions. They precede all forms of religion or ideology, even though they would be incorporated into later faiths in various forms. They are a pure extension of balance untainted by the human ego and are symbolic of a world that might have existed had mankind not given rise to evil. In a way, one could say that they safeguard the spiritual integrity of the world. They have existed long before mankind and causality, and they will continue to do so even after humanity is long gone. Where the law of causality is dependent on the continued existence of humanity for its own relevance, the four elemental kings are tied down by no such restraints. Elemental lords who are below the elemental kings. Lady of the Deep Water. This is an exceptionally powerful water spirit that was once worshipped in Enoch Village, but was forgotten by the village over time after the construction of the Church of the Holy See above her shrine. Her power is invoked by Shirkei when supernatural entities like trolls, ogres, and kelpies overrun the village. The Lady of the Deep Water proves to be powerful enough to sweep away these creatures and protecting her invoker from harm. She's the most powerful water spirit that we've seen in action outside of the King of the West. However, like all water spirits, she answers to him as well. The Rotting Root Lord. This is yet another powerful elemental whose powers are summoned by Shirkei in the group's battle against the Sea God. Seeing that this elemental is tied to the earth, it's more than likely that it answers to the King of the North as its liege. It resembles a massive decaying tree with unsettling humanoid features, complete with enormous tendrils that exude an almost necrotic aura. It represents the aspect of natural decay that nourishes the earth. His summoning is important to the plot of Berserk as it showcases Shirkei's mastery over elemental magic and her deep connections with the said elements. The Wheel of Flame. This is an extremely powerful fire elemental who, when summoned, exponentially increases Shirkei's fire-based damage. He embodies the destructive and purifying aspect of fire, burning away Shirkei's infernal foes to ashes. It has been summoned during several critical fights where there is a dire need for more firepower, notably during the battle with Ganishka's forces in Vertanis, and then during her sojourn through Kliphof. It's extremely hard to control and takes a major toll on Shirkei whenever it's summoned. Being a fire spirit, it answers to the King of the East. In what ways are the four elemental kings different from the Godhand? The four elemental kings stand in direct contrast to the Godhand in a lot of ways. While not being as influential in shaping human lives after the advent of causality, they are nonetheless very powerful beings. They represent the natural order of things and don't interfere with human destiny unless called upon to do so. The Godhand, meanwhile, is the chief instrument of the law of causality, and by virtue of that, they're constantly meddling with individuals. By their very nature, the four kings are either benevolent or neutral towards humanity, showing that not all spirits of the astral plane are inherently evil. Where the Godhand is tied only to the destiny of mankind, the four elemental kings are responsible for the overall spiritual balance of the world. While they may not be as powerful as the Godhand, due to the latter drawing their power from the constantly festering evil in human hearts, they still possess enough power to resist and abate the agents of evil. The Godhand are transient in nature. They will fade into obscurity without a purpose once humanity fades into oblivion, whereas the four elemental kings that represent the fundamental forces of nature will endure and outlast everything till the breaking of the world. Their origins, if nothing else, should quite clearly show how these beings are fundamentally different from each other. The kings are natural spiritual forces, while the Godhand's origins are mired in profane rituals and the sacrifice of one's soul. In a world dominated by fate and suffering, instigated by the Godhand, the four elemental kings provide hope and aid to those strong enough to wield their powers, standing in direct opposition to the evil permeated by the Godhand. Marvelous verdict! The four elemental kings of Berserk embody distinct domains and fulfill key symbolic roles within the series' cosmology. They're a breath of fresh air from the evil tormented spirits, foul creatures, pseudo-apostles, apostles, and the Godhand that we constantly come across in Berserk. While they don't make any direct appearances, their impact on the story is unmistakable. It's clear that Miura intended them to have a much greater role in the plot further down the line, and we may yet see that in upcoming releases. The four elemental kings are perhaps the most enigmatic creatures in the entire series, and perhaps it is this quality of theirs that has drawn numerous speculations from fans regarding their nature and purpose. We hope that with this video, we were able to answer some of those speculations. At the end of the day, everyone has their own interpretations regarding characters and events, and this just happened to be ours. We'd love to hear your theories regarding the four elemental kings. Do you think they still have an important role to play in the actual narrative of Berserk? And also, which of these elements do you relate to the most? We love making these theory crafting videos for you as they really allow us to delve into some of the craziest theories regarding this beloved series to the absolute fullest. If this video managed to pique your interest, be sure to check out the rest of our channel. We cover all of your favorite anime, manga, and characters and put out videos like this daily. As always, if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Thanks for sticking with us right to the end of this one, and we hope to see you soon in the next. Until then, stay safe and stay marvelous.